Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Matt here from Chill TCG. It's that time of the month again. We're going to be looking at the 10 best decks in the standard format going into the month of December. Today I'm joined by my special guest, Zach Lesage, or the Lone Blown as you might know him. He's a fantastic player, good friend of mine, and it was really great to have him on for the video. And I'm really excited, so let's get into it. And always, I want to give a big shout out to Kashvinder Mann and Pokestats.com. Those are the two people that collected the data that we used to assemble this list. Kashvinder Mann, you can follow them there at Cashman27 on Twitter, and Pokestats, you can go and check out their website at ptcgstats.com. And again, the rankings on this video, they're based on all the online tournament results throughout the entire month of November in the year of 2020, of course. And the better the placement that these decks got, the more points that they were rewarded for their performance in that tournament. So this means that, if you get first place in the tournament, you get more points, of course, for that deck than if they placed in the top 16. And by that same, logic, the more players playing that deck, the more points in total that they're probably going to have. With that in mind, let's get into our list. All right, everybody, let's get into the list. So, again, I'm here with Zach Lesage. What's going on, Zach?
Yo, what's poppin'? What's going on?
Not much. All right, so we're starting off the list here with number 10, Dragapol VMAX. It's only at 200 points. You'll see that these points go up a lot as we go farther in the list. But it did, manage to make this list this month, and it also made it last month, so I guess that has, a little bit to say about Dragapol VMAX. Looking at the tournament placements, it got second at the LOS Weekly, 10th at Sunday Open, 13th at Hexter, number 5 and number 4, and it got 16th at the Sunday Open on the 29th. People right now are just kind of running Dragapol mainly, right, Zach, with energy denial, with things like Lycanroc GX, that Clefable, I think, from Rebel Clash it was, and then the Giratina as well. And, really the only reason I think that right now Dragapol has maintained sort of its slight spot right now in the format is because it has good synergy with some of these energy denial cards, but what do you think? Do you think Dragapol right now is worth playing? I mean, do you think that there's any other good way to play Dragapol right now?
I mean, I think Dragapol, it's probably has to be played with this enough to disrupt your opponents, to kind of slow them down to the kind of speed that Dragapol's at. Because doing 180 damage, 130 plus the 5 snipe for 2, while it is a very strong attack, it's not as strong as compared to some of these other attacks like ADP drawing 3 prize cards after using Altered Creation GX. So just kind of denying your opponent the opportunity to attach energies makes it okay. Not sure how I feel about Dragapol VMAX in this current meta. I think that's why it's a little bit lower placed on this list. Just because you kind of, it's a little slow, has some rough matchups like with E-Turn, sure. And you really have to have that disruption package, which is going to slow down your deck. So, I mean, I think it's a little too slow to really creep up. Not really great at getting those first place finishes. But if you're in love with trying out some like sneaky decks or anything like that, you might want to look into Dragapol VMAX. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. And like you said too, I think once Eternatus came out, Dragapol took a huge dip, and kind of things like PIKACHU started to rise up a lot more alongside Eternatus. I think Dragapol right now, I mean, it's an average deck, right? It doesn't do anything particularly like super good like other decks do, maybe like E-Turn or ADP. But at the same time, it did make the list, so I think it's not a terrible deck. In terms of like next month's, or in the future, I guess for Dragapol, it all kind of depends on, whether its matchups get a bit better against other things that are really good right now in the format. Maybe after rotation, Dragapol will kind of maybe emerge again as one of the top decks in the format like it was a little while ago. But for right now, I think Dragapol is pretty average.
I'd say that too. I mean, I think Dragapol is one of those cards that you definitely want to have in the back of your binder or on your PTCGO account. It should also be noted, I think they're reprinting a shiny version of Dragapol box. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily pick up Dragapol now to anyone who's watching, but I'd probably pick up that box because you get the sweet shiny versions of the cards, especially like it's one of those like future headed cards where I could see it being really good, especially if post-rotation Colossal kind of takes out Eternatus. Basically just really the weakness is a lot in the low damage outputs there. And plus the deck's kind of on the expensive side too.
It really is, yeah. It is still pretty expensive, but all right. So that wraps it up for number 10. Let's move on to number 9. All right, and now on to number 9. We have Colossal VMAX. Now, Colossal VMAX, of course, came out middle of last month, middle of November. Kind of impressive that it managed to take a spot on this list after only being out for 2 months. Again, the placements are for the entire month of November, and we only had Colossal for about 2 weeks or so. So it's still kind of impressive that it made the list. But I think it was kind of caused mainly because of the hype around this card. Every set has like one new card, one new archetype that people are hyped about and play a lot. I think for Vivid Voltage, that was Colossal. Even though personally I don't feel that it's that good of a deck, it had a lot of hype, a lot of people played it, and as a result, it ended up getting some decent placements, but nothing too impressive. I got 9th at Hexter Season 3, number 7. I got 12th at Chill Series LCQ, shout out to Little Dark Fury. 13th at LOS Weekly, number 9, and 15th at the Hexter, number 10. Coming up at 283 points, a little bit more than Dragapol, but I would say it was played a lot more than Dragapol this past month, even though it was only out for 2 weeks. There's plenty of different ways to play Colossal, Zach. I'm going to highlight just sort of the basic one. I know that there's a healing variant, right, for Colossal that I guess you could play, but I think the majority of these placements are for people that are playing Colossal. They're playing Orguru, of course, to just utilize that first attack, Crushing Hammers to kind of buy yourself some time, maybe get a few attacks off without them being able to attack you, right, for a little bit. And then, of course, setting up with buff padding and that new fighting special energy, right, that makes it so you take less damage. I think that's sort of the basis right now for Colossal. Zach, do you think there's any other good way to play Colossal, or do you think that this is like for right now the best way to play it?
I mean, I think right now it should probably be noted that till this point we don't know how to play Colossal. It's kind of like an unknown void. Right. As you said, the deck's only been out for like 2 weeks, and it kind of gives us like Primal Groudon vibes, where it's kind of like a stage 1-ish Pokemon. It's not a stage 1, but it's a VMAX. Primal Groudon is a Primal Reversion evolution.
Right.
It's just really like the large HP, similar bulky attack costs. One way that I think might be really cool to play Colossal is just to really target the Dene GX and Crobat V on your opponent's bench. It should be noted that both of those cards are weak to fighting type.
Right.
This type play Great Catcher, Boss Orders, and using Oranguru or Rotom-Phone to knock out those Pokemon, your opponent probably can't respond to Eruption Shot, which makes it kind of interesting. But as of right now, like, that's just off the top of my head, super untested. I have a pretty standard build right now in front of me, just with Rotom-Phone. I don't even play the healing cards, but the buff padding, Oranguru, Crushing Hammer sounds really good. It's either not well positioned right now, not good at all, or unrefined in general, or maybe a combination of the three. Like, it has some hope, especially as you can see, like some of the bigger names, like Little Dark Fury, with their top 16 at the Chill Series LCQ. I mean, I think it's one of those decks. Give it some time. It seems pretty good, and especially like post rotation, looking forward, or anything else like that. If Eternatus kind of pops up huge, this deck seems like it would have a pretty good match against that.
And it does definitely have a pretty good matchup. But the one thing that just really kind of deters me away from this deck is the fact that even with the Oranguru, with the 1 energy, you're hitting, what is that, 130. I know there's things like Karate Belt, Martial Arts Dojo to do that extra damage, but that's a lot of cards, right, to not even do that much damage. And even things against things like Eternatus VMAX, even hitting for weakness with that first attack, you have to hit them 3 times, excluding the Karate Belt and Dojo. And I feel like for a deck that's hitting for weakness on one of the best decks in the format, that's still just really not that great, considering how no matter how much buff padding or energies that you put on this thing, he's still probably going to be able to 2-shot you pretty consistently. And I don't even know if that matchup's really great, and I think people run Crushing Hammers to make that matchup, even better. But it's been doing pretty well. It hasn't been out for a long time, so like you said, people will probably refine this deck. Me personally, I think it's Hyper Potion, right, Zach? Is that the one that, you discard 2 energies from it, right, and you heal like 120? Is that the card?
Yeah, you heal 120. I think, yeah.
So, I originally, when I saw this card, I was like, well, Hyper Potion's going to be broken, right? Because you can spam this first attack, and after you use the attack, you put that energy that you took off the top of your deck onto him, right? So you end your turn with the 2 energies. Next turn, you can just Hyper Potion for 120, heal for 120, discard those 2 energies, and then put 1 back on him to do that attack over and over again. In theory, that sounded like a good idea, but people just sort of haven't really been running it, so I don't know if that's actually a good way to play the deck. I haven't actually tested it myself, but that was my first sort of thought with Colossal. The wider community went a different direction, and it seems to have been doing pretty well so far, so I would assume that they're probably a bit more correct than I am in that sort of assumption.
I have very similar thoughts to you. I was thinking like one sneaky step further, and I was like, well, what if I put psychic energies on the Pokemon with Eruption Shot, and then play Suspicious Food Tin, so I only have to discard one. Because I was like, it's not tied to psychic type Pokemon. At least it's not as far as I've read the card. So I was like, oh, that could be kind of cool instead of Hyper Potion doing 2. I mean, it's interesting in general, but I mean, yeah, I think the general community, this kind of vibe for the list seems cool. It's one of those things where we'll have to see what the future brings us. But right now, Colossal is probably equally placed. Like, it's acceptable to play it. Probably going to have some of these peak performances in the top 16. I wouldn't expect it to go the distance too much more than that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Just like Dragapol, it's new, it's shiny, but it's still, I think it has a better sort of weakness spot right now in the format, hitting for weakness on things like E-Turn. But overall, I think it's probably about in the same tier as Dragapol right now. A very mid-tier deck, taking the number 9 spot with, again, 283 points. So, yeah, that's Colossal. Let's move on to our number 8 spot. And at the number 8 spot, we have Mewtwo GX Welder variant. Mewtwo GX Welder, it's been around for a very long time. Since this card came out, people were running it with things like Reshiram and Charizard. Charizard GX, it just became, at the time, it was one of the best decks in the format. Kind of came back and kind of was, again, a really good deck once ADP first came out, like when Sword and Shield base set was first coming out. Again, it took a little dip there for a few months, and then it seems to have just come back, I guess, with sort of a new Aurora box build. And different variants as well. Coming in at the number 8 spot, definitely seen a little bit of play, but actually seen very decent success. So I got 3rd at the Chill Series LCQ, 3rd at Hexter Season 3, shout out to Marcos Cifuentes, 4th at LOS Weekly number 8, 4th at Hexter number 5, and 6th at Hexter number 10. Now, coming in with 617 points, that's a lot more than our number 9 spot, Colossal VMAX. So we're taking a bit of a jump here. I think that Mewtwo GX Welder, it's the Welder variant is... it's a little bit harder now that a lot of Pokemon in the format aren't getting one-hit KO'd, right, by things like the VMAXs, but, it's still a very good deck, very consistent deck, and plenty of other cards now that you can kind of fit into with it, with the Aurora energies. But I've also seen that some people, Zach, are running it with, like, Horror energy, and they're just sort of going with a pure, like, Fire Psychic type build without, like, things like Naganadel, Vileplume, and that's also done pretty well, but for the most part, the core of the deck has stayed the same with Reshiram and Charizard GX, maybe like Heatran, I guess. But I think it's been pretty solid. I think it coming in at the number 8 spot seems a little bit low, but maybe it's actually correct now that I think about it. What do you think of Welder Mewtwo GX?
I mean, this deck seems to be proving itself to be going through the test of time. We saw it win our World Championships in 2019 with Henry Brand winning.
Exactly.
A few short months later, we move on to Latin America International Championships. This deck places within the finals. Then we move on a few months later in real life play. This deck wins Oceania International Championships, actually beating me in the finals, crushing my soul. And here we are again, almost a full year later, and we're talking about it during the pandemic. I mean, I think Mewtwo GX passed the rotation check with all the different Pokemon that you can copy. Now it's not necessarily like we're always going to copy things with Mewtwo. We just have a bunch of different techs. I personally like the deck better with Aurora energies because I feel like you could play more techs like that. But depending on how the math works out with Horror Psychic Energy, I mean, it's fine. Mewtwo GX, the Fire variant, isn't necessarily my favorite way to play Mewtwo, but I do think it's a valid choice, and it will continue to be a valid choice as things get printed. So even as we see upcoming sets, such as Shiny Fates come out, if there's a new Fire-type Pokemon that comes out or Psychic-type Pokemon, it's quite possible it fits into this deck, and this deck gains a new tech every single set. So like other decks that have extra energy acceleration, I think Mewtwo GX is just, it's fine. It's never a bad choice. It might not always be the most correct choice, but as you can see, it has a bunch of top 8 finishes, and it seems like it's fairly competitive still.
Yeah, definitely still a good deck. I think right now, for me, when I play this deck, what my favorite thing to do is to put that good old Incineroar GX in there for the 3 colorless energy, and sometimes just hit for like 400 or 500 damage, right? If you slap a Big Charm on Mewtwo GX, 300 damage is pretty hard to knock out. There's not many things that are going to one-shot you. And if you do have that Incineroar in your discard pile, then they got to be afraid, right? They got to be like, well, do I want to attack into him? He's just going to hit me back. for the one-hit
You're not even
KO.
into your discard pile, right? Like your opponent could blindly just be attacking it and not even knowing what's going on.
Right. Right, especially in the online format, right? It's hard to kind of keep up with this deck. You really have to pay attention when you're playing against these Mewtwo decks. Like you said, it was super good for about a year ago, right, when it was first emerging. Had a couple ups and downs since then. Right now seems to be sort of an up point for Mewtwo GX Welder. But as you'll see in the next slide, where there's kind of a new school version of a Mewtwo deck that we'll take a look at here in just a little bit. For right now, I think the number 8 spot for Mewtwo Welder, it might be a little bit low. I think maybe I could understand seeing this deck a little bit higher. But for right now, I think when we go and see the next deck, you'll understand why this one was a little bit lower. But I don't got much to say, man. I've been talking about this deck for months, right? So, and you got any last words?
I mean, I'm kind of with you. Mewtwo GX, like a lot of the decks on this list, have really been. I don't know if terrorizing our game is the right way to put it, but I'm going to go with terrorizing. They've been kind of stomping around, treating Pokemon as their stomping grounds. Mewtwo GX has already proven itself to the utmost level of success, already with a World Championship title under its belt. I mean, I think it's just going to continuously be strong, whether you're playing this variant or any other variant that we have on this list.
For sure. All right. That's it for Mewtwo GX Welder. Let's move on to the number 7 spot. All right, and at the number 7 spot, we got Mewtwo GX Lightning. Now, Mewtwo GX, the Lightning variant at least, has been sort of a new concept for Mewtwo decks. Zach, do you remember specifically where this deck was originated from? Do you know who first sort of built this and played this?
Yeah, so this deck kind of originated during some of the top European players like Tord Reklev, Pedro Torres, and a few others were playing it for the Players' Cup. They didn't necessarily squeeze their way through the Players' Cup, but it seemed after that it just became all the rage for a few weeks. I mean, it feels like it was ages ago, but it's really not that long ago. And as you can see on the list, like this deck with 2 first place under its belt, with Pedro Torres, Shadow Gabe Smart, and then a few other top 8 performances. This deck's kind of popping off right now for it only being out for a few short weeks.
Yeah, and exactly. So being at the number 7 spot, kind of just like Colossal, we really have only seen this deck for the past few weeks. Again, like I said earlier, this whole list was for the month of November in its entirety, but some of these lists, are brand new and came out later into the month. So it's still impressive with 705 points over really just the past 3 weeks. It's impressive that this has, come on to our number 7 spot here on the list. But like you said, once people heard about this deck and once people like Azul started playing it, it just sort of kind of popped off, right, and became a really popular deck. And it's a cool deck, so I understand, right? Again, it follows that sort of Aurora Energy, kind of coverage build that the newer versions of Mew 3 Welder are playing. You have access, again, to like Vileplume, Naganadel, all those good sort of Greninja, all those other kind of non-Electro type attackers that you can put into this deck. But it also has really good access to things like PIKACHU and Raichu Tag Team there, Choo-Choo. And those are 2 really good attackers in their own right. I think that this deck benefits from Mewtwo GX, and people are actually just throwing one or two Mewtwo GXs in a typical PIKACHU list. And I guess that goes under the category of PIKACHU and not, the Mewtwo Lightning variant. But it's interesting to note that even just normal PIKACHU decks are running Mewtwo GX right now.
Yeah, they're very similar, extremely similar. I was looking at it. I think it's like if you put 2 lists side by side nowadays, they probably at 52 out of 60 cards the same. And then it's probably the 8 cards are PIKACHU usually plays Crushing Hammers, and this deck would be like I play Vileplume, Galarian Surfetched, and a couple other tech cards of your choice. And that's really where the changes come from.
Yeah.
I think where this deck kind of takes its improvement over Mewtwo Welder, at least in my opinion, is that Tapu Koko Prism Star, comparing it to Welder, Tapu Koko Prism Star is not a supporter, so you can accelerate energy, attack with something that costs 2 energies, like Vileplume, by using Dance of the Ancients, attach an Aurora Energy, attack with Vileplume. But you could still use Professor's Research or Marnie or Boss's Orders in the same turn.
Right.
Whereas if you're playing the Welder version, you could not do that. So that's really the big kind of strength gain over this deck, which kind of propels it as a better deck than Mewtwo Welder.
For sure. No, I agree with that completely. And I was actually listening to an interview with Mike Fouché, the winner of our GG Tour Chill TCG Regional Cup that we had this past weekend. And he was actually talking because he won that big 300, 400 man tournament actually with Pikarom, but his list had Mewtwo GX in it. And he was saying that, just sort of the Pikarom deck with Mewtwo GX thrown in it, he was saying that it was a more consistent list, and in his opinion, a better list. And he kind of, said what you said exactly when you have access to Tapu Koko and supporters, but he also had access to things like the speed energy, the lightning speed energy, which he said was actually really clutch for him. Just overall was a more consistent list. But it's interesting to note, right? Both kind of ways that people are playing a Pikarom deck, they're going to have Mewtwo GX in it. And I think right now it's sort of just making that already good archetype even better. Right now we see that this deck, which focuses around Mewtwo GX, is still number 7th on our list, but Pikarom is going to be much higher. Right now, I think that this is a really good list. I like it a lot. Personally, I would play this list more right now, right? I would rather play this list than Mew3 Welder. But at the same time, they're both pretty good decks, and I think it depends on the matchups. They're pretty even, but I would say that Mewtwo Lightning takes the cake. At the number 7 spot with 705 points. Definitely, it's a definitely really good deck. Got anything last words to say here about?
I would just say don't sleep on this one. This deck is a deck. Watch for the video that comes out in a month from now. Watch this deck soar up to new heights. Right. I think this deck's kind of going to pop off. And if you like Pikarom and if you like Mewtwo Welder, this is like as if those decks had a baby together and that baby was busted at Pokemon.
Yeah, man. I agree. All right. Let's move on to number 6. All right. So number 6 on our list, we actually have Luke Metalization. Coming in with 1,184 points. Definitely a little sizable jump up from Lightning Mewtwo. But again, people were running this list straight from the beginning of the month. And I think even more heavily after Vivid Voltage came out. Still been a deck this whole month that people have been playing a lot of, which kind of makes a bit more sense that we see such a higher jump in total points for the month of November. But the placements have been pretty good as well. Personally, I thought that Luke Metal would be higher on this list, at least after Vivid Voltage came out with access to things like Coding Energy and the new Aegislash-V. But, those two things didn't really prove to be too valuable in the current format right now. People are just sort of were like, well, we'll just sort of play around it. No more Decigoons, right? But still at the number 6 spot, very consistent list, very good list. If we look at the placements, we got first at both Hexter 6 and 7, second at the Sunday Open, third at the other Sunday Open on the 29th, and then third at Hexter number 8. Again, just it's a good deck. It's been around for a while, right? It kind of came up around the same time as ADPZATION came out. And then it kind of took the lead, I think, for a little while during that first Players' Cup, I think it might have been, where Luke Metal ended up winning. But it's seen just a little bit of a decline, I think, in play overall as well as overall success in the tournament. People, again, play this deck with hammers. They play it with dolls. They kind of play a stally kind of, a stalling variant or, play style with Luke Metal. It makes sense being sort of a tanky deck. I think Coding Energy gives this deck a little bit more security, especially when you go up against things like Centiskorch. But, overall, I think that Luke Metal isn't as good as I thought it would be. What do you think, Zach? Do you think that Luke Metal deserves this number 6 spot?
Yeah, I feel like it's a deck that's appropriately placed right now. It's obviously has the strength to go the distance, as you can see with Regan and Berry Boy Finch with their first place finishes. And then again, with the rest of the finishes finishing out in the top 4, it's a fairly consistent deck. I think you have to kind of have that, patience is a virtue kind of mindset going in with this deck, because games can be painfully molasses slow, where you're like, I'm going to wait 3 turns to discard all my opponent's energies in their active spot. I'm going to make sure that they're doing minus 60 damage. I'm going to make sure that their VMAX Pokemon can never attack me again. So kind of going for that, slow and steady wins the race. This deck seems like it can win the race. It's a little tough. Even with the Coding Metal energies, fire decks are still running rampant in this format. I'm sure since we haven't seen them already, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Blissephalon, Centiskorch VMAX making this list. And those 10 fire decks tend to be pretty popular. I would tell you, I love fire decks myself too. Luke Metal's just launched those decks. I think Coding Metal Energy does provide some needed protection, but I think just more players are looking at different decks right now. Luke Metal's been out for a while now. So I think when new decks popped up, like the Mewtwo Lightning deck, I think some players decided to switch over to the more exciting decks.
Right, and I agree completely. The thing is, right now, if you were to look at just a normal tournament sort of metagame right now. When you look at the total decks that people are playing, our Chill TCG Cup this past weekend had 400 players. I believe we had something like 75 people play ADP, and we had like 20 something play Luke Metal. I think it's safe to say that it makes sense that a lot more people are playing ADP than Luke Metal. It seems to be a bit more of a an enjoyable deck to play with and against. But I kind of wager to say that if we had 75 people playing Luke Metal, if we had 25% of the meta playing this deck, it would definitely be higher on the list. I think it is a good list. It's just not a deck that is as widely played as some of the other decks that we have on this list. And like you said, things like Blounds, things like Centiskorch are still very good decks right now in the format. And Luke Metal, even with the coding energy, just it doesn't have a good time. There's not a whole lot that I can say about Luke Metal. Really, I thought it would go up right in this past month than it did from last month, but it seems to have actually gone down. I think about 2 spots in the list. Yeah, I still think it's a really good deck. I think number 6 is pretty fair right now. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those decks that it's going to stick around for a little bit more. Might not ever be as popular as it once was, but we'll see exactly what Pokemon prints in the future. I'm sure it's like most other decks that have acceleration of some form. Metal Saucer can power up new texts, as we saw with Aegis-V. So keep your eye out on this one. Might come back being super relevant in the future.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on. At the number 5 spot on our list, we have Blissephalon from Unbroken Bonds, Baby Blounds, as some people call it. Again, Blissephalon has been kind of a menace in this format, really since it kind of came out. It's sort of just stuck around, just like some of these other decks that we've talked about. I don't really see that it's going to get any worse or that it's going to go anywhere until it rotates. And as new cards come out, it just seems to have more cards in its toolkit that actually make it even better. I think it did see a little bit decline in play for about a month or two. But right back up on this list, actually better than Luke Metal this month. I got 1,272 points. It got first at Full Grip number 6, first at Hexer number 5, second at the Chill TCG Cup number 1. So a 400-man tournament. It actually went to finals, lost to PIKACHU. But big shout out to Jake Reynolds. Getting second with Blounds in a 400-man tournament right now actually says a lot. And also got second at Chill Series number 10. Lee Bui, or if that's how you say his name, great guy, great player. And then fourth at Hexer number 4, Mike Gibbs. Again, Blissephalon's one of those decks where you can't change it much, right? It's going to be the same deck no matter what. You might be throwing, 1 or 2 different new tool cards in there, right? That might come out with new sets. Right now, I think most people are just electing to run, the Jirachi engine to find those welders, find those fire crystals when you need them. And then things like Cramorant to sort of snipe the bench for those last 2 prize cards can kind of help right in that late game stretch with Blissephalon. I think a lot of decks now, or at least what I'm seeing, the better placing Blissephalon decks are ones that run, are ones that run upwards of like 18, 19, 20 energies in their deck, which is kind of crazy to think about. But it seems like the more energies that are in this deck, the more consistently that it places high. The decks that have about 15 to 16 energies don't seem to be doing too well. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not. But Blissephalon, it's incredibly powerful. Again, kind of like Centiskorch, right? It just has the potential to hit crazy damage and just kind of, take 3 prizes all of a sudden. Blounds is one of those decks with, like, if you have Oricorio in hand or on the bench, right, and you have Jirachi in the active spot, you can stamp Blissephalon down to like 1 or 2 cards, and it can just get all of those cards back into its hand if it needs to, which is really, really powerful. Marnie, I think, was a card that really disrupted Blissephalon quite a bit, Zach. But even with Marnie and stamps being so popular right now in the format, Blissephalon has still proven to just be really good and has placed really well. What do you think of Blissephalon?
I think some people know me as the lone Blissephalon guy. I really like Blissephalon as a Pokemon.
For sure.
That's more for the Blissephalon GX. But I think you're right. After rotation, people were like, oh, Blissephalon's dead because it lost Heat Factory, it lost Fiery Flint, it lost all these things. But now as new lists are coming out and decks are getting refined, I think everything you said is fine. It's a really strong single prize card attack. One of the biggest reasons why this deck is so strong is because it's scalable. Your opponent's Pokemon, you could do damage based on the amount of HP they have. So whether you're playing against an Eternatus VMAX with 340 HP, you can discard 7 energies. Other Pokemon that have 200 printed on it can't do 340. So I think Blissephalon, as it continuously gets new and new cards printed, it's going to be one of those things where it's just going to become better and better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know right now people in Blissephalon are playing like 4 fire crystals. They used to be playing energy retrievals on top of that. I don't see that being as common these days. I think they just kind of play 4 fire crystals and play them smart. But like you said, this deck did take quite a big of a hit when Fiery Flint got rotated out. That was a super important card for this deck. And I'm kind of scared to think about what this deck would look like now if it still had Fiery Flint. Might be one of the best decks in the format. But Blissephalon, I think for right now, for sure, it's the best single prize archetype in the format. Would you say that right now, Zach?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's definitely the best single prize deck in the format right now.
For sure. And, I like Blissephalon. I always hate playing it because I'm like, well, I'm going to do what I can, but no matter what, right? If he draws the nuts, then I'm screwed, right? But Blissephalon, man, great deck. I think being on the number 5 spot, I think people just aren't playing it that much in contrast to some of these other decks that we'll see higher up on the list. But if people were playing Blissephalon, even just 50% more, it'd be a lot higher on this list because I do think it is a really good list for sure. But that's the number 5 spot. Shout out to all these guys playing Blissephalon. Shout out to Zach here, the lone blown.
Wow.
All right, and let's move on to number 4. And number 4 on our list, we have the powerful Eternatus VMAX. Now, when Darkness Ablaze came out, Eternatus VMAX was all the rage. It was like one of the most expensive decks that you could have played, and rightfully so. It's extremely powerful. Bodied things like Dragapol. Actually had a pretty good matchup against things like ADP. Eternatus VMAX, still a very powerful deck, but it's actually seen quite a bit of a dip. I think last month, Eternatus VMAX was number 2nd on our list, if I remember. I'm taking a bit of a fall now to number 4, but the placements have been really good. 1,336 Pokestats points there. Pretty similar to the number 5 and number 6 spots on our list. Kind of in that, like upper mid tier, like B tier kind of decks right now in the format. People originally were just playing this deck with like a bunch of Zigzagoons and like Hoopas and Crobats, but recently, it's kind of evolved to be more commonly a poison variant with things like Galarian Slowbro V and what's the stadium card called? Gives you free retreat.
Dark City.
Dark City. So Dark City, Galarian Slowbro V, and those Toxicroaks, even Garbodor, some people are playing, definitely makes this deck a bit more powerful, might make it a little bit less consistent and fast pace. But at the same time, it makes it even more powerful, right? So doing on top of that 270 damage, you can potentially do like 50 damage in poison damage. On top of that, which is 320, enough to one hit KO a lot of VMAX Pokemon. It might be a little bit more awkward to get that off, but that potential is actually really terrifying and can be really scary when you're playing against Eternatus VMAX. One thing I do need to note, so I'm a big Orbeetle buff, and Orbeetle has that aromatic energy, which absolutely bodies Poison Eternatus. I just wanted to put that out there. But so people still run it with Zigzagoons, right? Just basic Eternatus a little bit. And people are actually starting to run Crushing Hammers in Eternatus, which, makes sense. People run Crushing Hammers in every deck these days. Number 4, pretty good list. Got first 3 times there, Sunday Open, LOS Weekly, and Chill Series number 9. Shout out to Fernando Cifuentes. And second at Hexter 13 and third at Hexter number 9. What do you think, Zach, of Eternatus right now in the format?
I mean, I think it might be in contention for being the world's most toxic deck. Not only does it have poison, literally toxic, you got Crushing Hammers in there. Make me want to rip my keyboard off my desk and throw it through my monitor. Don't tell mom. It's just one of those decks where like it's big, bulky, easy to play, lots of damage, low energy cost. It's just a really good deck. And I don't see that really changing for a while. Sure, Crushing Hammers can beat it. Sure, Poison Package might make it a little inconsistent. It's one of those things where it's just really fun to play at the end of the day. I think putting 8 Pokemon down on your bench is very fulfilling for a lot of players.
Right. I think when you can afford to put a Crobat on your bench every turn without it really being an issue at all, is going to be a good deck, right? It has a built-in energy acceleration with Crobat. One thing that's even crazy is they gave this thing like Hiding Energy for free retreat, which again works really well with this poison variant. But they also gave it a colorless energy in its attack cost, like for some reason. And now you can just play Capture Energy with it. And it's like, it's like, really? Like, how much else could you have just given this deck, especially when it came out? I think right now people just aren't playing it a whole lot. And I think that's, of course, because Colossal came out and people are a little bit afraid of that matchup. But, even with Colossal, I don't find this deck to have that bad of a matchup. But Colossal VMAX definitely really terrifying to play against. Just a really crazy deck when you look at it. 340 HP on a Pokemon like this, absolutely wild. And has everything that it could possibly need to be a great deck, and it is a very good deck. But again, I think towards the latter end of this month, people weren't playing it as much as they used to, and I think that's why we see it at number 4. But that's all I got to say about Eternatus, Zach. What do you think? You got anything else?
Yeah, I think you're right there with the Colossal. Like, not even the fact that thinking about the matchup, I think the idea is just fighting type Pokemon are scary. Eternatus should run away kind of vibes. It's one of those things where I think once the metagame kind of settles itself out and Eternatus feels like it's safe to kind of pop its head up again, we'll kind of see it pop its head out again and place a little bit higher on the list.
For sure. One thing I do want to note, just a side note, like Colossal VMAX, of course, it's supposed to be like a rock type, right? Which is why it has it hits super effective against dark types, but it's weak to grass. Personally, I would have liked to see a new high tier, like fighting type card, VMAX card in Darkness Ablaze, or hopefully maybe in Vivid Voltage or the next set, right? Whatever the next set is, I would like to see a fighting type VMAX that's really good. Not only will it hit for weakness on Eternatus, but it'll be weak to Psychic, which might open the format up a little bit for things like Dragapol, which, right now I think it's just a little bit imbalanced. That's just a tangent, but, that's my opinion. That's just my opinion.
I mean, you're probably right there. I think Pokemon, it's like playing rock, scissors, no paper, right?
it's so true.
So you just gotta wait for them to print paper, I guess.
Right, 100%. All right, let's move on to our top 3. At the number 3 spot, guys, we have Pikachu and Zekrom. So, of course, like I said, Pikachu and Zekrom. Like I said earlier, it's a really good deck. Nowadays, people are actually running just a couple Mewtwo GXs in it, which makes the deck even better. It's surprising actually that it's number 3 on the list this month. Last month, it actually took the number 1 spot over ADP, if you can believe that. But people have kind of reverted back to ADP. Pikarom, though, still at number 3, taking a little bit of a dip, but still an absolutely busted deck. It's got access to things like like Dedenne, which of course is in every deck, but of course it's good in this deck for sure. You got Bolt and V to start your games or to sort of be a late game sweeper. And you got Energy Acceleration with Tapu Koko Prism Star. And you also have that new Speed Energy to give this deck even a faster pace to it. Pikachu and Zekrom, sorry. It's just it's a really good deck list for sure right now. I think that this deck would be higher on the list, Zach, except right now people are a lot of people who played Pikachu are switching over to that Mew3 Lightning deck, and I think that's a big reason. If you were to add those two decks together right now, it would be much higher on the list. And I think that just the fact that it got split into 2 different archetypes, 2 different categorizations, might be a reason why Pikachu has dipped a little bit on this list. If you look at the placements, though, still insanely impressive. I got first at the Chill TCG Cup number 1, Mike Fouché. So Pikachu actually just won a 400-man tournament this past weekend. So people are still kind of really confident that this deck is one of the best decks in the format. Got first at Hexter number 11. Vitor Lugan, a great player. First at the Sunday Open, first at Hexter number 9, and second at Hexter number 10. 1,446 points. A little bit above, what was it, Blounds? No. What was our number 4 spot? I already forgot.
Our number 4 spot, Eternatus.
So just a little bit above Etern, but still, a busted deck list. I think that what I said with those 2 decks, Zach, splitting into 2 archetypes is a reason why it might be a little bit low. But overall, I think that Pikachu as a card is seeing play in a ton of decks. But, what do you think of Pikachu right now?
I mean, I think Pikachu, similar to a lot of the decks on this list, has been out for a while. This card came up in Team Up. Team Up's been a while. Like, this is the first set that released Tag Team Pokemon, and it's still out here. But just self-acceleration, one of the things that you want to find in Pokemon, if you're ever looking for a big deck in general, something that you think is going to be good, it usually breaks the rules of the game. This is a Pokemon that has 240 HP, which is absolutely disgusting for a basic, has acceleration in Tapu Koko, Bolton, draws cards with the Dedenne GX, self-accelerates itself, does extra damage and can snipe the bench with a huge attack. It's one of those things where this deck kind of has it all. So Pikachu, it's kind of like just super consistent, and that's really where its strength is. No surprise seeing it 3. If anything, the surprise is seeing it lower than top 2 decks. Usually it's a battle between ADP and Pikachu, but I mean, I guess there's other decks out there that are absolutely crushing it. So, I mean, I think Pikachu probably appropriately placed within the top 3. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this deck kind of move up in the next month, but I think it's just really good right now.
For sure. Maybe Colossal had a little bit to do with it in the past few weeks. I know Colossal has a really good matchup.
I always
against
forget about
Pokemon.
that card. It's just because it's like you
Yeah,
never want to seriously play Colossal, but it's always a threat of Colossal existing.
right.
To anyone who's watching this, feel free to put a couple copies of Mewtwo and Mew GX in your PIKACHU deck to turn your PIKACHU into a Psychic type Pokemon, because that Pokemon is no longer weak to Fighting type.
Which is
That's
busted.
that's the pro strats right there.
And has 30 more HP.
Yeah, exactly. You literally cannot lose with that card, and it has double the attacks. So you can copy. You can even copy to Den HGX if you want. So many options.
So many options. Pikachu busted again. It just won a 400-man tournament. Mike Fouché, had a great run, and that's actually interesting to note. Like Colossal is pretty popular right now, in terms of just people playing it, and Pikachu still won a huge tournament. So if that has anything to say about this deck, then there it is. Like Zach said, been around for a super long time. I don't have much else to say about Pikachu. To be honest with you, I think Team Up's the latest set in our current rotation, right? It's like Team Up through Vivid Voltage right now.
First set, yeah, 100%.
So it's crazy that pretty much one of the oldest cards right now in the standard format is, still winning.
Yeah, Pikachu out here with a gray beard, talking about going uphill both ways to school, and with the 1446 CP out here crushing it. It's Grandpa giving a butt whooping.
That's so funny. All right. That's it for Pikachu. Let's move on to our top 2. At the number 2 spot, Zach, we've got Centiskorch VMAX. Now, for a little while now, since Darkness Ablaze, Centiskorch VMAX has been considered a very good deck. I think for about like a 2-week span this past month, it was considered the best deck in the format after winning a series of good tournaments, right? It had a lot of good placements. In about a 2-week span, everyone was like, oh, Centiskorch is the best. And then Pikachu kind of swept up on it real quick. But Centiskorch, it's insanely powerful. People like Kashvinder Mann, people like Thomas Brophy, and a few others have really sort of pushed the boundaries, I think, of Centiskorch lists. If you look at like a T Brophy Centiskorch list right now, he's running like Giratina to get rid of special energies. He's running like a Bird Keeper for whatever reason, maybe even like a Zigzagoon. They've kind of turned this deck on its side, on its heel almost, and just made it a little bit more sort of adaptable to the current standard format. And I think that's helped this deck out a lot. Personally, I think that Centiskorch was always a lot more viable to obtain, right? To build a Centiskorch list was always a lot easier than to build an Eternatus list, especially for how good both those decks are. I felt like, building Centiskorch was just, not only was it a lot easier, but it was a better idea overall. It's got 1,694 points with a parenthesis there. I don't know why that's in there. That's my bad. I got first at Tackle number 4, second at LOS Weekly, second at the Sunday Open, second at Hexter, and fourth at Hexter number 11. So we don't see that many first place finishes this past month for Centiskorch, but what we see is just a massive collection of top 8 finishes. Which do add up and do accumulate to points here on this list, which I think is why Centiskorch, is ranked number 2 on this list. Again, I do think that over the course of this past month, it was the second most played deck, which probably, of course, attributes to it being number 2 on this list. I know originally some people were playing Zach like green Centiskorch, and a few other weird variants, but ability Centiskorch with like Heatran, Jirachi, it just sort of seems to be the more consistent, the more sort of impressive way to play Centiskorch. What do you think about this deck? Do you think that there's sort of something that we're missing with it? Do you think that it's overhyped, Zach, or do you think that it's sort of appropriately number 2 on our list this month?
I mean, I think it's something that's going to go down as the format adapts. So one thing that a lot of peeps should note is every single time a new set drops, usually the older, better decks from last formats continuously kind of appear at the top as players kind of discover the new things that came out in Vivid Voltage, such as Orbeetle and Colossal, which are usually going to be on the lower place, if not placed on the list. Centiskorch VMAX being at the top, no surprise. And I think the variant that Cashman and Thomas have been playing is very good. During this time, I was also able to make at least top 16 in the Players' Cup in North America.
Right, because you're still playing, right?
Yeah, we're still the tournament's still going on there. Unfortunately, can't really talk too much more about what's going on, But the streams are going to be turning on soon, so I mean, everyone will be able to watch and see how the tournament played out. The Centiskorch VMAX deck, I like it with the Pokegears more than Jirachi, but I mean, it's a consistent, slow burning train, really, where it's just Welder, build up your energies. It's a pretty low energy requirement as well. Self accelerates with its attack as well. So I mean, I think there's, as much as Eternatus is satisfying to put all the Pokemon on your bench, I think it's satisfying to have all those energies on a Centiskorch and go for a knockout reset stamp. It's huge. So I think every format usually has a really good fire type deck. Centiskorch VMAX is the one that feels like a true fire type deck, whereas Baby Blissephalon just feels like you're throwing away your fire energies, right? It's not really a fire type deck. Whereas Centiskorch VMAX really stays true to the roots of just being like a very strong Pokemon. So I give this deck a thumbs up. I think it's going to go down a little bit more the next video. So check out for the decline on this deck coming up. But right now it's kind of hot.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think fire type decks in general are in a good spot right now. In our format, I think Centiskorch is the best fire type deck, right now in the standard format. So I think it makes total sense. Of course, Centiskorch, it's kind of funny because, players like you and players like Thomas, a lot of good players right now who are playing in all these online events have chosen to play Centiskorch, which I think says a lot about the deck and in general. So I think that as long as sort of things like, as long as things like ADP or Luke Metal are really popular in the format, fire type decks and Centiskorch VMAX in general are going to be really good. But like you said, as time goes on, I think it will definitely decline. At the number 2 spot, almost 1,700 points, Centiskorch VMAX has proven to be, one of the best decks in the format right now. And at number 1 on our list, guys, we have, of course, ADPZATION V. I'm remiss to even talk about this deck right now. Last month, it was, I think, number 2 on our list, fell short of PIKACHU, which I was actually really excited to see. But now with 2,300 points and just an absurd amount of people playing ADP, it came back up, right? And it's just seeing an incredible amount of play, and as a result, it's seeing a lot of success. People don't like to see ADPZATION at the top of the format, but it is such a good list, and I don't honestly think it's like that much better than other decks. It's just one of those decks that everybody can play and everybody is playing, and as a result, it's just something that you're always going to run into. And if your opponent draws the nuts with ADP, then you're pretty much screwed. And it's just everyone likes to hate on ADP, but honestly, for pretty good reason. If you look at these placements, first Sunday Open, first Hexer number 10, first Hexer number 8, first at Full Grip number 5, and I put 4th up here. It's gotten plenty of second place finishes, Zach, but I put 4th up here with Ryota Sato in this big 400-man tournament because I felt like that was probably, a more substantial.
More than a first, right? You got to look for the prestige of the events.
Right. So I think 4th at a 400-man tournament is pretty impressive. It's not as impressive if you think about we had 75 players at a 400 playing ADP. About 22% of the meta share for that tournament was ADPZATION. And we had, I think, 2 make top 8, 1 made it to top 4. So, not as crazy, I guess, as you might think with that many people playing ADP in that tournament. But for right now, it seems like just normal ADPZATION with like crushing hammers, I guess, is sort of the main way that people are playing ADP. I know for a while there was like a new ADP variant, Zach, popping up like every day. There was like Persian GX, there was like Clay, there was like Pokemon catchers. I'm sure there's plenty more, but for right now, it just seems like hammers is like the go-to deck to play for ADPZATION. But yeah, man, it's just blown these other decks out of the water in terms of its total points. But again, I think that just has to, you have to point out how many people are playing this list, and total number of players adds up to the total number of placements, and I think that's why we just see it number 1 on this list by such a wide margin this week. I'll let you go on your rant about ADP. I'm sure you have plenty to say.
I mean, I think ADP is one of those things where I've been playing the game since 2005, 2006, and ADPZATION likely takes the place of best deck of all time. And I don't think a lot of people really have talked about it like that. It might not always be the best deck in our format, but it's the best deck of all time. Due to the unique situation that we are in the pandemic, and with the set with Zacian V getting released in February, we've probably seen more games and more tournaments played with ADP than any other deck, period, ever before. Because back in the day, there weren't as many tournaments having to travel and things like that. Online tournaments, you see 100-player tournaments, even the 400 person Chill TCG regionals with GG Tour happening on a semi-regular basis now.
Right.
ADPZATION's just, it's got the numbers, it's got the stats. You got hundreds of players working independently on kind of one deck. So I think just like the stats of the deck prove that this deck is the true real deal. Drawing extra prize cards, being able to finish games in as little as 3 turns total to draw 6 prize cards with relative ease is absolutely disgusting. As a player, I'm not a personal fan of ADPZATION. I will play it for events if I feel it's the strongest play for me. I think ADPZATION's a really good way for you to get some Pokestats CP, as you can tell, with it being the #1 deck. But it's one of those things where I don't know. This deck's kind of a monster, and it's kind of evolved to something where I don't even know if we want to if we like where it's at right now. But it's to anyone watching, it's the true deal. It's busted. The deck's insane. Pick up those league battle decks from your local retailers.
Support great value.
Support your stores right now. I'm sure they're probably sold out too while we're at it. So check those out. Stay safe. That thing's busted. Pick up a couple of those, and you're good to go.
Yeah, for sure, man. I just keep thinking of things that I can say about ADP. Zach, you've been playing for a long time. For me personally, I got into the competitive scene about a year ago, right? That's when I really sort of dove in and started playing competitively. And around that time was when ADPZATION kind of first emerged, and it blew onto the scene. And I'll tell you what, as somebody who was first getting into the competitive scene for Pokemon TCG, I was like, well, I'm going to build the best deck right now, which is ADPZATION. It was easy to learn. And I ended up winning a lot of games with it. So for me personally, I feel like all of these players who don't necessarily have a ton of experience with the game are choosing to play ADP, and they're doing actually really well. So I think that's a big reason why so many players in general are playing ADP.
It almost feels like cheating. Like if you play against some of the biggest names in the game, Michael Pramalot, Azul, GG, Tord Reklev, you could play ADPZATION against them and have a 50% chance of winning the game.
Right.
Because the deck can, if you're not there in skill yet, this deck can carry you a little bit.
Yeah, more than a little, I think.
At least some games. Sometimes where it feels like it's like full on putting you on the back and sprinting for you. But I mean, I was being nice to all the viewers out here. ADPZATION, it gives you a good chance to get some of those wins.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think that if you're drawing the nuts with ADPZATION, if you get that turn 2 GX or turn 1 GX going second, and you hit like 2, 3, or even 4 of your hammers, there's literally nothing your opponent can do, like absolutely nothing. And it's one of those decks where if enough people are playing it, you're gonna get those few people in tournament who just get a lot of good luck throughout the tournament. If the math works out for you and you get lucky, then you're going far in the tournament. That's really all I can say. I'm not saying that ADP doesn't take any skill, but if you get lucky with it, it'll take you farther than any other deck right now in the format. Don't got too much to say about ADP, Zach. Is that a wrap?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a wrap on ADP. Like, what's going to be said now is going to be said last month and a month from now. I think ADPZATION is going to hover within the top 3 decks until the main components of this deck get rotated out. But even then, there's I think Japan said that they're reprinting ADP and Sword and Shields in that format, if that's what I read is correct. Otherwise, it's going to get rotated out. So, I mean, wait until August to see what's going on with ADP, or if the card gets a ban before, then it's just that good that we could see some or all of these cards getting bans.
Oh, man. I would like to see it get banned. I think it'll be healthy for the format. But let me ask you, Zach, next month when we come back for next month's video of the top 10 decks, do you think ADPZATION will stay #1, or do you think PIKACHU might hop back up for the number 1 spot?
I think PIKACHU's gonna hop back up after players kind of get their depending on how we rank things with Mewtwo and Mew, because it's getting kind of it's tough with the Mewtwo Lightning, the Pikachu Zekrom hybrid with Mewtwo Mew, and PIKACHU. It's kind of like 3 decks functioning as 1 deck right now. Depending on how we rank them, I could see PIKACHU or Mewtwo Lightning or any of the 3 decks kind of really coming as first place. If not, it's going to be super close.
For sure, man. It's scary to think that we'll have ADP, PIKACHU, and Mewtwo and Mew GX as our 3 best decks in the format about a year after Sword and Shield has come out. But that's just how it goes, I guess, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, Zach. Just to summarize, so, what decks do you think right now are sort of the best up-and-coming decks? Zach, what decks, honestly, let me ask you this. What decks are not on the list this month that you think will be on the list next month, if there's any?
Ooh, that's a super hot question. I'd say if there's a deck that's going to make it onto the list next month, I wouldn't be surprised if Desi Goons crept back in there. Usually decks that are sneaky like that find a way to kind of squeeze their way back in through the cracks. That one seems like it's a type of deck that could make it in one of the lower placements. But I mean, that's probably just going to knock off like the Dragapol or the Colossal. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Whimsicott pop in there. Players really love single prize card decks. But beyond that, I think we're going to have very much a similar list for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
Give or take a few spots.
I agree. I think last month we had Excadrill that made the list at like number 10. And then the month before that, we had like Decidueye Goons at number 9 or 10. But I think like you said, Goons could definitely make a comeback. We saw that Altaria control deck win the last chance qualifier. Again, it's not a deck that a lot of people are playing, but that is kind of important to note. I think you're right. I don't really see this list changing too much in the next few months, but we're gonna cover it anyway. You already know. But that's going to wrap it up, guys. It's been a pretty long video. I want to thank Zach, the Lone Blound, Zach Lesage, so much for coming on and helping me out with the video. Having him on here was definitely a really, it was really great. Having a second opinion, having somebody with that playing experience, with the success as a player in the game, definitely gives a good perspective, right? Especially to all the people watching. So, big thanks to you, Zach.
And thank you for having me. It's super chill vibes here. Literally, it's in the name, Chill TCG. So if you're looking for some great content, feel free to check it out here on YouTube, on Twitter, at the Discord server. I mean, you also run tournaments. So if you're looking for an outlet to play some Pokemon during the pandemic, stay safe, stay indoors, play some pokes at Chill TCG, busted tournaments.
For sure, yeah. And definitely go check out the Lone Blound, Zach's YouTube channel, the Lone Blound on YouTube. Zach Lesage, are you at Lone Blound on Twitter as well, or is it?
Yeah, at the Lone Blound on Twitter, Twitch.
Nice.
I got a Discord server as well. I mean, I'm not as big as a YouTuber as you are, but we try out here.
I think the difference is so small, right? It doesn't really matter a whole lot. But for sure, man, go definitely check out Zach's channel. Check out my other videos if you haven't already. What's up?
I appreciate that. Thank you for the shout out.
Yeah, man. No problem. I hope you come on for other videos in the future, man. It was real fun.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. So that's it for the 10 best decks of November going into the month of December. Again, the weekly Chill Series events are coming back this Wednesday. So Season 2 of the Chill Series is coming up. Our first event of the season is sponsored by Atlas Collectibles. They're giving us $250 in-store credit to our cash prize pool. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a super great tournament, as well as we have another online regional style event sponsored by GG Tour coming on December 26th. Again, it's a 2-day event, but this time it's a $3,000 prize pool. It's not free entry. It's a $10 entry, but if you use my promo code CHILL5, I believe it is, the promo code CHILL5 or ChillTCG5, I'll put it on the screen for you guys to see. If you use that promo code, entry fee into our $3,000 cash prizing tournament on the 26th is not $10, but $5. So I highly suggest that you go register for the event. The link will be down in the description below. And that's all I got to say. So thanks, Zach, for coming for the video. We'll see you everybody soon, and I'll talk to you soon, Zach.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, later.